At my uncle's retirement party, my cousin Stephen pulled off frauds and crossed all boundaries, then tried to pin it on me. So, buckle up, because I still can't wrap my head around how this all went down. Last month, my uncle David had his big retirement party. He'd been a manager at this auto parts company for like 35 years, and the family wanted to celebrate. They rented out the banquet room of this Italian restaurant in town, you know, the kind with them lighting too much red velvet on the chairs, and Sinatra playing a little too loud. Everyone was there, aunts, uncles, cousins, even a couple of old co-workers who looked like they hadn't seen daylight since the 90s. Now, I've got this cousin Stephen. He's 19, my age, but to put it lightly, Stephen's always been that cousin. The one who somehow convinces grandma to slip him extra cash, who mysteriously loses things that never turn up again, who always seems to be standing just a little too close when someone's wallet goes missing. But hey, it's family, right? You don't expect things to actually blow up. Anyway, the vibe of the party was chill at first. People were giving speeches. My Aunt Linda got emotional about finally having David around the house to fix the leaky faucet, and everyone laughed. Then came the big moment. They brought out this envelope with a huge card and a bunch of check/cash inside. All the relatives had chipped in as a retirement gift. It was a pretty big deal. That envelope ended up sitting on a gift table next to a pile of wrapped presents. And that, apparently, was too much temptation for Stephen. I swear, I didn't even notice anything was wrong until Aunt Carol cornered me near the bar. She goes, "Did you see Stephen take that envelope?" I was like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" She said she'd seen him slip something into his jacket when no one was looking, and now the card was gone. At first, I thought, no way, even Stephen wouldn't be that bold. Not here, not tonight. But then, 10 minutes later, Stephen himself strolls up to me, all casual, and whispers, "Hey man, if anyone asks, tell them you were watching the table, they'll believe you." My stomach dropped. I just stared at him and said, "What the hell did you do?" And he just smirked, like it was some kind of joke. Of course, Uncle David noticed the card missing pretty quick. The whole room went tense. People started tearing through gift bags, looking under chairs. And then, I kid you not, Stephen pipes up with, "Well, maybe OP saw something. He was standing by the table earlier." The look on my mom's face when everyone turned toward me pure disappointment, like she even considered the possibility. I felt my ears burning. My own cousin had just tried to throw me under the bus at our uncle's retirement party, in front of half the family. So there I was, standing in front of half my extended family while Stephen basically tossed me into the fire. The room went dead quiet. You could hear the clinking of glasses from the restaurant staff clearing tables in the back. Uncle David, red-faced and clearly stressed, said, "All right, who saw what? Somebody's got to explain where that envelope went." My Aunt Carol, bless her, tried to speak up. I thought I saw Stephen take it, but before she could even finish, Stephen cut her off. No, she's confused. I was just grabbing my phone charger from my jacket, but I did see OP standing by the table for a while. He said it all smooth, like he'd rehearsed it. The betrayal stung so bad I couldn't even form words at first. I finally blurted out, "Don't put this on me. You literally told me to cover for you 5 minutes ago." That was the wrong thing to say, apparently, because suddenly half the family was arguing in circles. And Linda was like, "Wait, what? Cover for what?" My mom snapped, "Stephen, are you lying? Because this is serious." And Stephen just shook his head with a smug grin that made me want to knock him out right there. Then, in the middle of this chaos, my grandma, a tiny little woman, 4'11", always in church dresses, stood up and banged her spoon against her glass. "Enough, this is David's night. We are not going to ruin it with this nonsense." Except, of course, it was already ruined. The restaurant manager came over, looking uncomfortable, and asked if we needed the police involved. That sent a shiver down my spine. I mean, imagine cops showing up to a family party because my idiot cousin decided to commit fraud with retirement money. Stephen, sensing the heat, doubled down. "Look, if you want, I'll empty my pockets. I don't have anything." He flipped them inside out, made this big show of patting himself down. Then, all self-righteous, he added, "Maybe someone should check him." And he pointed directly at me. I wanted to explode. "Are you kidding me right now?" I shouted. "You literally came to me about this. Don't act innocent." My uncle's face, you could see the stress lines deepening. He rubbed his temples and muttered, "This was supposed to be a happy night." My mom looked torn between throttling Stephen and defending me. Aunt Carol kept repeating, "I know what I saw," but she wasn't exactly the most reliable witness after 2 glasses of wine. The tension was unbearable. People started whispering, cousins exchanging nervous glances. And then, right as things were about to boil over, the envelope turned up. One of the waiters found it shoved halfway under a stack of gift bags. Except here's the kicker, the flap had been ripped open and some of the cash and checks were missing. Now the room wasn't just tense. It was electric. Somebody had clearly taken it, and the only question was who. And all eyes swung right back to me because Stephen made sure they did. The moment the envelope was found, the restaurant felt like it had gone from cozy celebration to courtroom drama. People were whispering, pointing and clutching their drinks like they were evidence. Uncle David looked crushed. This was supposed to be a celebration of my career," he muttered under his breath, shaking his head. Stephen, of course, kept his smug composure. "See, nothing missing," he said, holding the envelope up. Except, and I swear this is the most infuriating part, the cash and some of the checks were actually gone. That meant someone had taken it and tried to make it look like it hadn't happened. And naturally, he tried to point the finger at me. "You were by the table," he said again, louder this time, ensuring everyone could hear. "You probably saw the money, right? Maybe you took it." I wanted to scream, but I knew that losing my temper wouldn't help. Instead, I squared my shoulders and said, "No, Stephen, I didn't touch anything. You saw me. You know I didn't. Stop trying to ruin this for me and Uncle David." That set off a chain reaction. Aunt Linda jumped in, visibly shaking. "Stephen, this is outrageous. Stop lying." But Stephen just waved her off, like she was overreacting. My mom, usually the calm one, was fuming. "Stephen, what is wrong with you? Do you not understand boundaries? This is family. This is your uncle's retirement." Her voice cracked, and I could tell she was about to lose it. Stephen didn't back down. "Boundaries? I'm just being honest here. OP was right there, and now the money's missing. You all can't just ignore that." Then my younger cousin, Ellie, she's only 14, but as a spine of steel, shouted, "Stop it, Stephen, you're the one who messed with the envelope." She pointed right at him, and suddenly the room fell silent. Even Stephen's smirk faltered for a second. Uncle David stepped forward, looking like he was about to have a meltdown. Enough, I want the truth now. It was then that Aunt Carol, who had been hovering nervously near the bar, finally spoke up. I saw him, David. Stephen grabbed the envelope, then shoved it into his jacket when nobody was looking. Stephen went pale for just a moment, and then he tried the classic deflection again. No, that's not true. You're mistaken. At this point, I couldn't hold back anymore. Stop lying, Stephen. You told me to cover for you 5 minutes ago. Everyone heard you whisper it to me. My voice echoed across the room, loud enough for some of the older co-workers to give shocked looks. The tension in the air was like a balloon ready to pop. Family members started yelling over each other. People were splitting into teams, and Uncle David looked like he was seconds away from collapsing in his chair. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, Stephen tried to make a break for it, heading for the exit with a part of the envelope still in his pocket. The room erupted. As soon as Stephen made a move toward the door, I didn't hesitate. I lunged and grabbed his jacket sleeve, nearly pulling him off balance. Where do you think you're going? I yelled. He tried to jerk away, twisting his body like some cartoon thief, but I held on. Let go of me, you don't understand, he shouted, but the room had already exploded into chaos. Aunts were gasping, uncles were yelling, and even a few of the co-workers were standing, unsure if they should intervene. Uncle David stepped forward, his face pale but his voice booming. Stephen, stop this right now, give me the envelope. Stephen froze for a second, probably realizing the gravity of the situation. But then, in a move that still makes my blood boil, he pulled a crumpled handful of cash from inside his jacket and shoved it onto the table. There, that's all that was missing, he said, trying to act like a hero returning lost property. I could see through the act immediately. Some bills were clearly ripped and out of order. I shot him a glare that could have melted steel. You ripped the checks and took some cash, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You lied to all of us, and you tried to pin it on me. Aunt Carol finally stepped in, pointing directly at him. Stephen, that's it. You crossed a serious line. This isn't just mischief, this is fraud, and doing it at your uncle's retirement party. You're out of control. My mom was shaking, her voice almost a whisper. I can't believe you would do this. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Stephen's smirk finally vanished. He muttered something like, I just wanted some of the money, but no one cared to hear the excuses. The entire restaurant had gone silent, watching this family drama unfold like it was some bad reality TV show. And Uncle David, surprisingly calm now, said, Stephen, you need to go home now, and you will apologize to everyone starting with me. His voice carried this mixture of disappointment and authority that actually made Stephen flinch. Reluctantly, Stephen stuffed the remaining cash and checks back into the envelope. I noticed he avoided eye contact with me the whole time. He walked past the family, mumbling half-hearted apologies, and the manager silently let him leave, probably glad to avoid calling the cops. After he left, the room was tense but quiet. Aunt Linda was shaking her head, muttering, I can't believe he did that. My mom hugged me tight, whispering, I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. I just nodded, exhausted. I didn't feel victorious, I just felt drained and furious that my own cousin could betray me like that. Uncle David finally sat down, sighing. Well, this will be a retirement party we'll never forget, huh? Some nervous laughter rippled through the room, but it was clear the night was forever tainted. I kept thinking about boundaries, how some people just don't understand them until they completely implode a situation. And Stephen, well, he had crossed every line possible. The rest of the night was awkward, to say the least. People tried to go back to celebrating Uncle David, but the tension lingered like a bad smell. Conversations were stilted, laughter forced. Every time I caught a glimpse of Stephen outside through the restaurant window, I felt my blood pressure spike. My mom stayed close to me the entire time, whispering, I can't believe he tried to throw you under the bus like that. You didn't deserve this. I just nodded, still too angry to speak. I mean, it's one thing for a cousin to be mischievous, it's another to commit fraud and accuse family in front of everyone. Aunt Linda pulled me aside a little later, looking both worried and angry. He did the right thing calling him out. I just wish more of us had been brave enough to stop him sooner. He's crossing boundaries that are unthinkable. This isn't just stealing, it's about respect, and he has none. I appreciated her words, but honestly, I felt hollow. Family drama is one thing, but when someone deliberately tries to ruin your reputation and at a celebration that was meant to honour someone else, it stings. Meanwhile, Uncle David tried to salvage the night. He raised his glass and said, despite the unexpected drama, I appreciate everyone being here. This is still a celebration, and I'm grateful for the love. People clinked glasses, but it wasn't the same. Even his usual jokes felt forced. Later, I overheard Stephen texting someone in the parking lot, probably trying to spin the story to anyone who would listen. That angered me more than anything. How can someone be so selfish, so blind to the consequences of their actions on real people? By the end of the evening, the envelope situation had been resolved in the eyes of the family. Uncle David counted the cash, the missing checks were accounted for as a loss, and Stephen had left. But the tension lingered. My mom kept glancing at me, clearly worrying about the long-term impact on family dynamics. That night, lying in bed, I replayed the events over and over. I couldn't believe my cousin had tried to frame me, let alone that he had done it so openly in front of everyone. I kept thinking about boundaries, and not just in terms of money, but in terms of trust, respect, and family loyalty. Stephen had violated them all, and it shook me more than I expected. I realised this wasn't something that could just be swept under the rug. Stephen's behaviour had consequences, and people needed to know what happened. But I also knew confronting him directly later would be challenging. I wasn't sure if he'd even feel remorse or just try to manipulate the story further. All I knew for sure was that the celebration had turned into a lesson I hadn't asked for. Some people, even family, have no respect for boundaries, and sometimes the ones closest to you are the ones who will hurt you the most. The next morning, the fallout was already spreading like wildfire. Word of Stephen's stunt at Uncle David's retirement party had travelled through the family group chat, and let me tell you, everyone had an opinion. Some were furious, some were shocked, and a few were just shaking their heads like, why are we even surprised? I got a message from my Aunt Carol first. I can't believe Stephen, I'm going to call his parents tomorrow, this is unacceptable. I replied, I know, I don't even know how to process this yet. By the afternoon, my mom had spoken with my uncle. They were both still upset, but they agreed that Stephen couldn't get away with this. Uncle David was especially firm. He needs to understand that boundaries and respect aren't optional. Stephen, this is family, not some video game where you cheat for point. Later that evening, I got a text from Stephen's mom, my Aunt Ian. She sounded furious but also defensive. Stephen claims he didn't take the whole envelope. Are you trying to start a war? I almost laughed in disbelief. He stole from Uncle David and tried to frame me. That's a war of its own. By midweek, my cousin Stephen was officially grounded from family events. Uncle David decided that the next family gathering would be off limits for him until he demonstrated real accountability. That included apologising personally to me, my mom, and Aunt Carol. Honestly, I didn't expect much, given his track record. The most satisfying moment came when my Aunt Carol confronted him directly. She didn't yell. She didn't argue. She just calmly said, Stephen, you broke trust in the worst way possible. You crossed boundaries that you may never get back. Think long and hard about your choices. I heard he turned pale and looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole. Meanwhile, the rest of the family started talking openly about the incident, but not in a way that was humiliating for me. They were focused on teaching Stephen a lesson. Even Uncle David, in his own way, said, I love the kid, but he needs to understand respect and boundaries. Money isn't the worst part, the betrayal is. At school the next day, some of my friends knew about what happened and gave me sympathetic looks. I realised this wasn't just family drama, it was about integrity. Stephen may have thought this was a clever scam, but it had consequences far beyond what he imagined. I also had a lot of time to reflect on boundaries. How easy it is for someone to think they can overstep without repercussions. How quickly trust can erode. And most importantly, how standing up for yourself, even against family, is sometimes necessary to protect yourself and others. By the end of the week, Stephen had sent a half-hearted apology text to me. I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to see if he'd truly understand what he did. Actions speak louder than words, and after everything, words weren't enough. It was hard seeing him get punished, even slightly, because family is complicated. But boundaries had been violated, fraud had occurred, and someone had to learn a serious lesson. A few weeks later, the family slowly tried to return to some sense of normalcy. The tension from the retirement party was still there, like a faint scar, but at least the chaos had simmered. Uncle David finally cracked a smile during a small Sunday dinner, joking about how he survived his retirement party without calling the cops. Everyone laughed cautiously, but the memory of Stephen's stunt lingered. Stephen, of course, kept a low profile. No more casual smirks, no attempts to sneak around or manipulate anyone. He tried to make amends, starting with brief apologies to Aunt Carol, my mom, and even me. I messed up, he said quietly one evening when we were all in the living room. His voice lacked the arrogance from the party, but I wasn't ready to forgive him fully. Yeah, you did, I replied honestly. You crossed boundaries that shouldn't even exist between family members. Uncle David, surprisingly, offered Stephen a chance to learn from this. You need to understand respect, accountability, and consequences, he said. You'll have the chance to rebuild trust, but it starts with actions, not words. Stephen nodded, looking more serious than I'd ever seen him. I wasn't completely convinced, but at least he seemed to realise the gravity of what he'd done. Over time, the family gatherings became less tense, though Stephen's place in them had changed. He wasn't allowed to handle money for gifts or contribute to envelopes, and everyone kept a closer eye on him. It was awkward, but necessary. People treated him cautiously, reminding me just how fragile trust can be. I learned a lot from this whole mess. Standing up for myself, even when a family member tries to pin false blame on me, is essential. Boundaries are real, and violating them has consequences. Even though I love my cousin, I had to separate his actions from who I am. He may have tried to manipulate the situation, but I refused to let him define me or ruin my reputation. Looking back, I can see that the retirement party was more than just a celebration of Uncle David's career. It became a lesson in family dynamics, boundaries, and accountability. The moment Stephen tried to commit fraud and blame me, everything changed. But through it all, I discovered who truly had my back: my mom, Aunt Carol, Aunt Linda, and even Uncle David. They reminded me that even when someone crosses the line, family can still protect and support you if you stand your ground. Stephen's actions left scars, but they also left lessons. He might never fully understand the impact of his choices, but I do. And sometimes, surviving family drama isn't about winning or losing, it's about holding your ground and refusing to let someone else redefine your reality. In the end, Uncle David's retirement party was chaotic, stressful, and dramatic. But it also revealed the truth about people who you can trust, who will support you, and who will need to learn the hard way that crossing boundaries comes with consequences.